You're listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcast. This podcast was recorded on August 8th, 2018 at 11 a.m. Hello everyone, my name is Juan Rivas and I am the host for Let's Talk Trio. I'm excited for today's episode. We are featuring a long-awaited reunion between two DJs, Miss Victoria Smith from University of Alaska in Fairbanks and former host of Trio's company at KSUA. Victoria will be on the show to discuss her involvement with Trio. We're going to reminisce a little bit about our radio collaboration that we made many years ago. It was a kind of out-of-the-blue collaboration. At the time, I was working college radio for Eastern New Mexico University Hound Waves, and Victoria was at KSUA. We had found each other as Trio colleagues, and I saw that she was running a Trio-related radio program, and we kind of connected on that level of we're both broadcasting to send a message about Trio programs, which was really cool. We collaborated, so I appeared on her show, she appeared on mine, and it was just a wonderful collaboration between two Trio programs, our two people that are alums of Trio, and we again, it was an amazing collaboration. I still cannot, unfortunately, get the math right for Alaska because I keep thinking that they're either 2 hours behind our time or 2 hours somewhere. I'm missing the math, but fortunately Victoria, she was able to help correct me, and we're syncing up our calendars to make this interview work. So again, the interview today is Victoria Smith, who is a Trio alum and currently the director for the Trio Student Support Services program at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, and she's doing amazing work. I think that, again, when people go to work for Trio, especially alum that go back to work for Trio, I think there's this greater sense of passion that occurs because you really want to see your program succeed, and you really want to give back as much as you can to a program that helped you succeed. So with Victoria, I can relate to in many levels. We talk greatly about our Trio programs. I still do as the host of this podcast. It's still, for me, very important to talk about Trio and how Trio just made a big difference in my life. So I'll have Victoria here on the show here in a little while. And just to put it out there, folks, so I'm glad that you're enjoying the podcast. I'm glad that you're really supporting us. I posted earlier on how best you can support this podcast. We're non-monetized. What that means is I've deliberately chosen not to commercialize my podcast. Several reasons behind that. One is I do use music that doesn't require any royalties. If I were to monetize, I would have to change that. I would have to start paying bensound.com to at least purchase that license to use the music. Being non-monetized and being non-profit at the moment means I'm just doing essentially the basics to exist as a podcast station or a podcast program. Another reason why I stay non-monetized is because I feel like you, the audience, deserves to hear the interview without any commercial breaks. It's kind of like listening to NPR, but I don't want to interrupt your listening pleasure. I don't want to interrupt anything that would interrupt you from taking you away from the story. In the future, I am going to be looking for possible ways to fund. Right now, I've collaborated with various people to bring you a higher quality recording. Currently, I am going off of a very basic recording equipment. Microphone, laptop, and headphones. That is my equipment. And it's not a very large investment, but in the future, I may be looking for audience help. I want to stay non-monetized. I don't want to cross over into the commercial stream just yet because I feel like this podcast is a public service, and I feel like just getting support from the audience, either through Patreon or something, I'll figure out a way where this becomes a little bit more than just a hobby for me. Because again, I love recording, I love broadcasting, I'm working on my editing skills, and being completely honest with my audience is I don't want to cross over into the commercial because I feel like I would lose a lot of control of where the commercial breaks would happen and the content of the show and the quality. I feel like I might end up losing up on a lot on that. So yeah, so in the future, if you ever want to be featured in Let's Talk Trio, please send me a message via Facebook. I want to get your story. I want to get your story on air. I've already said in the previous podcast, the next few weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks, it'll be a CSU, Colorado State University, heavily focused shows. There are people on campus that really want to be interviewed and want to get their story on here, and I want to honor that and make sure that they are indeed sharing and advocating for Trio. Now, for the directors out there, a quick message. I know that it's very hard to toe the line between are you lobbying for Trio or are you advocating for Trio? And it's a very thin line to advocate and to lobby, right? So in this show, I promise to stay away from anything political, anything that might impact legislation. I will, for the Trio alum that are out there, if you're listening, those of you, I will ask you about, current legislations, and we'll talk about that. But for the directors, even the Trio alum that end up working for Trio programs, I promise not to, have your job in jeopardy by talking about legislation that, maybe that you're not allowed to talk about. I know that there's a very, very thin red line in there somewhere that you're not allowed to speak about certain topics, and I will do my best to stay away from them. I am looking for underwriters for Let's Talk Trio. Currently, I am not wanting any sort of monetary compensation for doing a very brief spot for your program or for your whatever nonprofit organization is. I would love to have underwriters for Let's Talk Trio. This would give me kind of a warm-up to commercials at the very beginning of every podcast. Again, folks, we are interviewing Victoria Smith from the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. She is a Trio alum and former host of Trio's company. Please enjoy the show, enjoy the podcast, and I will see you at the end of the interview. Thanks. I want to welcome to the podcast Victoria Smith. Victoria, it's been a while. How have you been?
Oh, I've been good, hanging out up here in Alaska, just kind of living the dream. Sadly, I did move away from doing my radio show Trio's Company, but I'm really excited to see that you're continuing yours, Let's Talk Trio, in this new format. So glad to see you're keeping that flame going.
I appreciate that. Yeah, this podcast started in June, beginning of June, and it was just something that was kind of sitting in the back burner, and I really wanted to do it. But I remember us collaborating, and it was just kind of an out of the blue collaboration.
It was like random happenstance. I was like, I've got to be the only Trio radio show in existence. And I was like Googling, looking around, and all of a sudden I found yours, and I was like, oh my God, there's another person just as crazy as me.
And I love it. Because when we finally connected, it was the radio show themes were playing exactly the same. We were trying to get stories out there and try to really advocate for Trio programs.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And so can you tell me, is Trio's company, is it still on the air at KSUA?
It is not, no. Unfortunately, fortunately, unfortunately, it's a happy medium. I have moved into a position of director in my program, so I no longer have the luxury of time, as it were. So I've kind of moved away from it. We hired a new employee in the office, Donald Crocker, who also kind of picked up the torch for a little while and kept that going. But we both have been a little bit busy. It's definitely still in the back of our minds, something to keep in our minds, and maybe pass off to students that are interested.
Oh, that would be great,
and re-engage the student population in that activity if we can't get the staff to do it. But we have the on-campus radio station, so that there's always the opportunity to go back.
Absolutely. And congratulations on you being named the director of the Student Support Services Program. Again, my hat's off to you.
Gosh, thanks. Yeah, everything has changed rather quickly, but I'm just so excited to be able to help students and whatever capacity that comes in. That's at this particular juncture, director position was opened, and I applied for it, and Yeah, I can't think of a better place to work, honestly. I love my job and I love what I do, and I don't think very many
Mm-hmm.
people actually get that opportunity.
No, it's a very rare opportunity that you get to lead a program, right? And to be trusted with a program, especially a student support services program where it serves many students. So
Yeah,
again, congratulations on getting that position.
thank you.
And I know that we've been kind of updating each other, but as you already know, I stepped down from Trio for almost 2 years now. So
Yeah,
working closer to with Colorado State University, working with academic probation students. So that's kind of been my career path, and it's still kind of in the line of Trio. I love what I do, but yeah, it's still kind of following that same path, like with that Trio passion. So since leaving Trio's company, you've been working on various things. Can you update the audience a little bit on the things that you've been working on?
oh my gosh, yeah. Well, in in the work sphere, continuing to serve students and run our summer bridge program, which was kind of my baby going into things. This Emerging Scholars Academy that we do, which we're going to put on next week actually. So we're really gearing up for that. Um, Additionally, like outside of work, I've been pursuing my master's degree. So I've been focusing. I've been able to participate in our Arctic and Northern Studies master's program here at the university, and focus in higher education and cultural identity, and meld my passion, on an academic level with what I do for my job, and then also what I care about personally. And as you know, I actually come from this background. I'm a first generation college student. I grew up below the poverty line, and I'm passionate about what I do from a very grounded perspective, I guess.
Right.
And having benefited from these programs, it was just a great opportunity that I was able to blend all those things together in a master's degree, and then successfully defend. Last week, I successfully defended my master's project, so I was really
Congratulations.
excited about that. It was 5 years in the making, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were about to kick me out if I didn't get done.
I can totally relate to that. It took me about the same time amount of time to complete my master's. So I completely hats off to you. Kudos, congratulations on successfully defending your master's thesis. It's just or your dissertation is just a great sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, thanks. It was definitely a relief to have that off of my plate. Working as interim director and essentially still doing the assistant director position
Hmm.
while finishing up my master's degree over the summer was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I'm glad I didn't give up.
Oh, good. And I'm glad we are all glad that you didn't give up because now you're in a position to really help influence the direction of your trio program. So we heard earlier that you were involved with trio programs early on. We kind of want to know your origin story. I know I'm kind of sounding like a superhero type thing where we need to hear your superhero origin story, Victoria. So would you mind sharing your story with us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I've been in trio for like 15 years, either as a student, or more than 15 years actually. So more than half of my life has been spent either as a student in these programs or working for them. Even in undergrad, I worked for Upward Bound Classic here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks as a resident mentor. So, I've never strayed far from trio. It all started for me in seventh grade. There was a very nice lady, Pam, who came to our middle school, and she was recruiting for the talent search program. At that time, it was called Educational Talent Search out of the Centralia college there in Southwest Washington. And I didn't really know what she was talking about, honestly. Like, first of all, I did not see myself going to college at all, but she kept saying, like, field trips and
Hmm.
Mariners games and like chances to get out of school,
Hmm.
and I was 100% on board with that. So I wish that my motives came from a better place, but honestly, I just wanted to get out of school,
Hmm.
which is hilarious as it turns out because of my career trajectory. But
Right.
I I stepped into that. I stepped into that program, and I realized, like, yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff, but there was a lot of like positive feedback. And I think I learned pretty early on as a kid that I really liked that positive feedback that I got from school and from sports, and that was something that really, really motivated me. Part of it was being a people pleaser, but part of it was also really having something that I felt good about and I felt like I was good at, and people wanted me to be there. That was a really good feeling. And so I pursued educational talent search and all its wonderful opportunities all the way through middle school and high school. They connected me with Upward Bound Math Science in University of Alaska Fairbanks. So I participated in that summer program, which was a 6-week on-campus, first time I'd ever really been away from home for that long kind of thing. Really got outside my comfort zone by coming to Alaska, but I got to say it was the best thing that I've ever done, because I got a tuition waiver, a chancellor's tuition waiver for my first year.
Oh, wow.
And I went from being a kid that had no idea what they were going to do, no real opportunities for higher education, to somebody who was definitely going to go to a 4-year college.
Amazing.
So, thanks. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to reflect back on it, but I'm so glad that I reached out and I asked for help all the time. I didn't really care if it made me look like an idiot. I knew I didn't know what I was doing, and I was okay admitting that. But I knew I needed lots of guidance, and so I really did. I asked a lot for it, and that continued when I got on campus here at UAF. I joined the Student Support Services program right away. My counselor, Mary Meyer, she made me promise that I would sign up for the SSS program as soon as I got here. she's like, as soon as you get on campus, you grab that application, you sign up for that program. And so I showed up right away and was like, I was told to come here.
Yeah.
My counselor, Mary, told me to come here. And I connected with some folks that I actually knew from Upward Bound Math Science, who had been working with this SSS program, and spent my whole undergrad participating, and now I get to work for this program that has helped me so much. So just incredibly thankful for all the opportunities, for as chaotic and stressful as my childhood was at times, and not really knowing what I was going to do. Things have worked out so well, and I'm grateful for my family for being supportive. I'm grateful for my community and all my coaches, all my all my youth pastors, all my everything, for being there for me and supporting me, even though they thought I was a little bit crazy for moving to Alaska.
Yeah. And no, it's not crazy, right? Like it looks like you really enjoy being in that beautiful state. It looks wonderful. I'd like to visit someday, so maybe. Let's see how.
You should definitely come up. We could have like a one-time only trios company meets, Let's Talk Trio on the KSUA. You could record it for a podcast.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh, yeah.
That would be a great times. People would have no idea what was going on, but
we
would probably have fun.
we would have fun, absolutely, Victoria, and absolutely someday we'll make it work, absolutely. So having heard your story, and I'm noticing a very common element among a lot of trail alum, and I know I've experienced it as well, is that when people assume, right, that college students are just college ready, and they're going off, that sometimes first generation low income students are the ones that want to feel like they're up to speed, and sometimes they don't ask questions or they don't follow up very often. What were some of the challenges you faced going into college?
That's a really great question. I think I faced a number of challenges. There was, unfortunately, I had a number of family deaths when I was in college, and to be so far away from home was really hard. I lost a cousin, my grandparents. I lost my dad my senior year in a car accident, and so there was just a lot of loss, and processing that so far away from home was challenging. But I did know to reach out for help, and I did. I really leaned on my SSS advisor, who ended up being my supervisor here in this office later on, Ginny. And I couldn't have made it through those experiences without the faculty mentors that I had, without the staff mentors that I had. I also was really stubborn and caused a lot of pain and hardship for myself, which was unnecessary. But I just had my mind made up that I was going to be a bachelor's of science in biological sciences, and I was going to teach high school science after I graduated. And I did that program to the extent that I bombed my sophomore year. Like, I probably should have failed out of college. I had 2 semesters. One was like a 0.8 something, and the other one was like a 1.2 something. Like, it was bad. Because I was so adamant. Like, this is the identity that I've taken on. You know, everybody is relying on me to be successful in this. Like, I can't let anyone down. I can't let myself down. And it took like a real come to Jesus meeting with my SSS advisor. Like, hey, I know you love the sciences, and I know that you're really good at some of them, but you're not good at math, and you're not putting in the time and effort to do well in these courses. So you need to reevaluate where you're going in your life. Not that you can't do this, but that, like, it's maybe not worth the time and effort you would need to put in to make it happen. So really trying to reevaluate, like, why did I even like the sciences? What did I want to do? What was my end goal? And how could that translate to another major that I was also good at and also, you know, enjoyed? And figuring out that, like, you know what, I really like the way that science is. It's kind of organized. It's cause and effect, right? It's things are interconnected. And you know, the one other place that I kind of saw that happening was in history, actually, and trying to figure out you know, themes over time, and how things are interconnected, and how at different points in time all across the world, very you know, similar things were taking place in different cultures, you know. So it was still allowed me to focus on something that was interesting to me and had interesting connections. It still allowed me to focus in people, which, like, teaching after high school is kind of after college was my goal in high school. But focusing in social history also was a great way for me to, like, figure out, you know, my place in the world and kind of how it all connected together. I also had great faculty in that department, so that was another bonus.
Yeah, and again, very apparent that you had a lot of support behind you, and I think that for a lot of TRIO students, right, that it's when they get into college and they get into a college campus, that support, they want it to be consistent, and they want it to be the same as they were when the way it was when they joined the TRIO program, that they want that level of support. And I feel like a lot of colleges are beginning to understand that, and they're needing to form these kind of support communities for students, because I think there's a movement, and I'm sure you've probably heard about it, about the campuses, not the student being ready for college, but the flip, it's the colleges being ready for the student, and not just so for you, as you go into the directorship, you want to influence and make sure that you want to continue helping students. Is there any part of that you're going to, or is there any parts of the program that you feel are going to be important to either address or to make sure that you have that communities of support?
Yeah, that's a really great point. It actually relates to the research that I presented last week as part of my defense. You know, I kind of glazed over this, but, you know, I focused in history, cultural history, and higher education, and just talking about how Alaska is a unique place with a population that experiences challenges that other states just don't experience. You know, like things here. We're part of the circumpolar north. You know, there are unique geographic challenges that we face, you know, political challenges. There's economic, you know, we're a resource-based economy, which is inherently boom bust, you know, and when we're in a bust cycle, and having a state-funded institution in the north, that's creates a lot of challenges. But what I focused on actually is not so much the challenges, but the student population that we serve, and the challenges that they experience, and how, you know, if we create thoughtful policy and thoughtful you know, courses to help this population that we serve, how much that can do for us, not only for like retention and graduation rates, but also for the students, you know, successfully completing their degree programs, which I think is a huge part of that. So I really focused in on student-driven strategies for success, and a lot of these first-generation and low-income college students, academically underprepared students, they're entering the university system without the same cultural capital and social capital and financial capital that many continuing generation students have, or students who, are above the poverty line. So finding a way to help create that cultural capital once they get here, because it's not like they come in at a deficit and then have no opportunity to grow from there. That's a fixed mindset, right? We talk a lot about this in higher education, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. These students are ready and able to need that foundation, and we can help them get that.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of college campuses are beginning to realize. I love how you use the term cultural capital. That sometimes we are not aware of, right, of what students already know and how they can come in kind of already prepared. And that's for me, that's kind of speaks for how college campuses are beginning to shift their mind on how they approach student and student development.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I feel like, and this is just kind of sharing out loud. For me, it's always felt that universities and colleges across the United States have this sort of identity crisis. They're trying to figure out who they are, what their purpose still is. And I know for a lot of colleges that have not caught up to this conversation, they're feeling kind of left out. But I know that University of Alaska and Fairbanks, that y'all are doing a really good job out there to really address student development and address the unique population and the unique challenges that you all have over there.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people here who really care about students and really want to help them be successful. But sometimes they've worked in higher administration for a while and have sometimes forgotten what that student experience looks like, or how policies could affect people who are the boots on the ground. And so just being really honest in those conversations and saying, like, I see where you're coming from on this, but I really think how would this affect our undergraduate population who's coming in without that same cultural capital? Because we serve over half of our undergraduates are the first in their family to go to college, and so we gotta keep that in mind when we institute these kind of changes and make sure that we're meeting that student where they are. And you know what, it's easier said than done. Absolutely. It's a spendy model. TRIO programs, the services we provide are comprehensive, which inherently means that they're expensive.
Right.
But they do good work, and they really can level the playing field for students who experience these barriers when they're pursuing their degrees. So I'm of the belief that it's a good investment of time and money, but I understand the limitations. For sure. Absolutely.
And as far as the work that you're doing, again, very happy for you, Victoria. You keep doing a lot of great work out there. I hope to read your dissertation and your thesis. I really want to kind of delve into that conversation. Can you kind of give us a little taste of, I know you kind of already explained it briefly, but kind of go into like a little bit of detail of what discoveries have you made? What can you talk about as far as how you want to address those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely did a project. So there's no dissertation. I took kind of the easy way out. I learned through this process that I'm not necessarily an academic so much as I am a practitioner, and I'm learning to be okay with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing so off-putting as writing about imposter phenomena while experiencing imposter phenomena.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And just going through that process and realizing that, like, my identity didn't disappear when I got my bachelor's degree. I carry this into the rest of my life, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Definitely something you want to keep in check and not let it kind of keep you from being your best self. But you also you want to acknowledge that it's there for a reason, and it actually is an opportunity to connect with students who experience that same feeling. So the majority of my research was around creating some sort of first-year seminar or first-year experience course for first-generation college students who are also low-income and are academically underprepared for college. So just a really targeted course to meet the needs that these students have coming in. And the majority of my research focused in retention strategies in higher education, but also with the lens of the background that I have in history, and specifically history of Alaska, and the understanding that there are, for the undergraduate class, the freshman class coming in the fall semester of 2017, we had over 26% Alaska Native or American Indian students, and that's a huge percentage of the population. That experiences very different high school, and transitioning to college can be really challenging. Like the preparation that comes in rural Alaska for colleges, it looks different than in urban areas, and there's very unique challenges to providing quality education in rural Alaska, and I think it's a tough thing to talk about. It's definitely it's a little bit of a touchy subject because there have been so many changes of the guard with education in rural Alaska. Missionary run schools, Bureau of Indian Education schools, state-run schools, and so on. So just, meeting the needs of those students once they get here. If we can't change their high school experience, once they get on campus, what can we do to really help them be successful? And so also acknowledging that beyond that, we also have a lot of first-gen and low-income college students, and knowing that universities are set up with very middle-class values and expectations, and knowing that our students come in with that kind of mismatch. A lot of the research that I delved into acknowledges that higher education, while a great opportunity to move out of a lower socioeconomic status and an opportunity to move into that middle class or upper class level, depending on the degree, that oftentimes students come to college with that expectation and then flounder and fail out, and it actually keeps them in that lower income earning bracket because they don't leave with a bachelor's degree. So instead of higher education being something that opens up new doors and new possibilities, it can oftentimes be that ceiling that keeps students from being successful if they don't have the support that they need to be successful. And luckily at UAF, I've been lucky enough a program that really they value higher education. They value services for the students that we serve, and our TRIO program here has been just incredibly well supported by the institution. I think being under the office of the provost makes a really big deal. We're under an academic unit, and not everybody gets that opportunity to be under an academic unit like that as a TRIO program.
That's very good. Yeah, very, very good. Victoria, I just want to again just really emphasize that you've done a lot of great work, and it seems you really shine through with being a director with student support services and all the work that you've done previously. It seems like you keep heading on this path of being practitioner, like you said earlier, of really affecting how a student can be successful at the university, especially on college campuses, when students feel kind of out of place, that imposter syndrome that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and it's I think it's something that not just our student population faces, but I think everybody to some extent faces that experience of feeling out of place or not feeling like you don't belong. And the real shame is that we don't talk about it. We don't open up and say, I don't feel like I know what's going on here. I feel like everybody else has it all figured out. And the more open we can be about those experiences and reach out for help when we need it, that's been the only way I've been successful at even a little bit. I could not have done it without the support system, all the different counselors that I had going through, high school, college, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
It's a village of people that have helped.
Absolutely. So to kind of wrap up our podcast, 5 to 10 years from now, or maybe even soon, are you thinking about possibly pursuing a doctorate degree?
Oh, God. You probably picked the wrong time to ask me that question.
Sorry.
I don't think I'm in a position to make any kind of decisions like that. I really don't see it happening. I'm a little burnt out right now, to be honest.
Gotcha.
I gotta spend some time doing some self-care, and
that's
running, and getting back to a somewhat normal life. But I think I'm just going to invest my time and energy into making this the best program it can be for our students, and making sure that, other students on campus who are not able to use our services, we're capped at 280, but there's over 2,000 students eligible for our program, really trying to spread the approach that we have, that comprehensive advising approach, to more students, so that it's almost like a given that all students would experience these same kind of services, and the wraparound approach to advising and to financial aid help and career services help and everything like that, so that everybody can access it.
Absolutely. So it seems like you're already dedicated to what you want to do. I can relate to you on the burnout. I think after completing my master's program, I wanted to take an extended break from academics for a while and just kind of focus on, what my purpose was. So I completely hear you on that. Self-care is super, super important.
Yeah.
So again, Victoria, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing your story, sharing us, kind of giving us an update of how you've been and all that, since we both kind of went off the air for a while. And and I just really truly enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing where you take this podcast. I'm so excited that you've continued to pursue this, and I'd love to help in any way I can.
Oh yes, please, absolutely. I'll keep you posted.
Okay,
so
sounds good.
You just finished listening to the interview with Victoria Smith, the current director of the TRIO Student Support Services program at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, and she was also the former host of TRIO's company at KSUA. I really want to say thank you to Victoria for coming out and doing the interview. I also want to send thank yous to all the audience. Thank you so much for listening, for continuing to support the podcast. And a special thanks to my three people that I always thank. Mr. Rodrick Chambers for being the honorary co-host and advisor for Let's Talk Trio. I also want to thank Mr. Scott Kendall for being my tech advisor and overall production advisor as well. I also want to give a quick thanks to bensound.com for the music that you continue hearing every single week. Very wonderful music. I feel like it really fits the tone of our show. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I will see you next week with a brand new episode.